and welcome to My Existential Crisis, the podcast where we talk about all of the crazy things that send us into a existential crisis. My name is Madison Epley.
And I am Hailey Guffrey.
And we are your hosts. We are best friends. We are here to tell you about all the fucked up things that happen in our world, unfortunately. Hailey, how you doing today? How you doing lately? Haven't talked to you in a little bit.
Sorry, I'm eating. I'm chewing.
What are you eating? Tell us.
Krabby mac and cheese.
That sounds so good. I thought you were going to say Krabby Patty at first, but
No.
Krabby mac and cheese sounds so good. What about this week? How was your week? Did you do anything fun? What about this weekend that we're recording on since it's Saturday?
Did I do anything fun last weekend? Or last week? No. Well, I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. Life's been, I don't know. I'm kind of just existing at this point. I had a short week. No school yesterday, so that was nice.
That's nice. Yeah.
I spent all day yesterday thinking it was Saturday, though.
I worked from home for most of the week, so I went back to work on Thursday, and I thought it was Monday. I asked somebody how their weekend was, and they were very confused, and I didn't know why they were confused, and I realized it was Thursday. Oh, but I was working from home because I was on paternity leave because I got 2 cats.
They have a paternity leave where you work?
Yes, my work has a paternity leave, so that means I can get 5 work from home days whenever I adopt a pet. So I took advantage of that, and it's a good thing I did so that the boys can get adjusted. For anyone who is interested, which I'm sure you all are just dying to know, they are 2 black cats. Their names are David Bowie and Thackeray Binks, Bowie and Binks respectively. They are so sweet. They are so lovey. David, who, he was never a cat person, now he like baby talks to them and wants to cuddle them. Like, he was pouting in bed last night because they kept running away. They wouldn't stay in bed to cuddle. He was so sad. But he loves them. I love them. They're amazing. So yeah. Yes. I'm also sick again. And like, honestly, I should just start announcing whenever I am not sick, because that is more infrequent than when I am sick. And it's so fucking irritating. I am so fucking sick of being sick, and like, I've been in such a bad mood this whole week because I've been sick, and like, I just got over an ear infection and bronchitis, and now it's just a cold, but I have a terrible bronchitis-y cough now, and I'm just very congested, and I'm just very irritated. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling now. Now this is like a week where I'm rambling. I also, like, I'm not doing the best, like, I'm fine. I'm doing great, but like, I have been a little on edge, especially because I'm sick, and like, I've been really busy. So like, I just kind of need a breather. Yeah. This is my closing weekend at the show. I've been doing a lot of rehearsal, so I've just been like having something every day, and then I'm sick on top of it, and I'm just very irritated. Also, super random, I've never said this, but I think I have dermatillomania. Do you know what that is?
No clue. I've never even heard of it.
It's a skin picking thing, and I've kind of like been in denial about it for a while. And like, I've always thought like skin picking was normal. That was kind of like what everybody did. But I'm realizing that like, it's not normal, and it gets really bad whenever I'm really anxious, which I have been this week. So like, my fingers are kind of bleeding because I've been picking at them. I also pick at my cheeks and my lips. It's not good. Not good. Nice. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, so my fingers hurt because I've been picking at them, and I've been anxious, so that's why I've been picking at them, I've deduced. And so that's what's new with Madison.
Oh, Madison.
Yeah, but I'm here. I'm alive. I don't know what I'm fucking saying. It's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's okay. Everything's fine. Everything's okay.
Everything's fine. Everything's great. I will be healthy one day.
Yep.
Well, on a brighter note, I was hoping that maybe you would like chime in with something.
Oh,
I don't know.
You can't just like,
I feel like I brought the party down.
You can't just expect me to say things. I'm not.
I mean, you're so good at it though. You're so good. You make me laugh all the time.
So I've recently had a resurgence in something.
Okay.
My love and deep admiration for the Hunger Games.
Okay.
It's been reignited. What?
Oh.
What?
I love you.
What?
What? Okay, what started this? Like, what do you mean your deep admiration and love of?
What do you mean? What started? Like, do you want the history? Do you want the backstory?
No, like, how did it resurface? How did this resurface?
TikTok, baby.
How?
I don't know. I think what happened was Netflix added the Hunger Games, like, last month. And so everyone has just been
watching them.
Yeah, losing their collective minds over the Hunger Games. And then I was like, man, I should reread these. I should watch these. So I watched them the other night. I watched Hunger Games and Catching Fire. And I was like, man, I forgot how I loved this.
Yeah, you were big into it.
I was so into it. For those of you who don't know, which is going to be a lot of you, most of you. People. All of you, probably. When I was in seventh grade?
Yeah, seventh grade. Because I was
in 7th grade, and I started reading The Hunger Games for the first time, and it became my entire personality.
It was
everything. It was my whole kit and caboodle. To the point where I had my English teacher. She gave me, like, a Hunger Games decoration. It came with, like, a Scholastic box. And she said, I want you to have this.
Oh!
Because I was so into them.
Oh, my gosh.
And I've told my boyfriend this story because my boyfriend works at our local movie theater and therefore was probably working when I did this.
Yes.
I was broke as a joke in 7th grade, obviously. I was poor.
Yes.
I came from a, not poor, but I came from a lower middle class situation. I was very, like, I didn't
Money's
have
tight.
Money was not disposable in my home.
Yes, understandable.
Yeah, and, like, so what did I do? I wanted to be the baddest bitch at the Hunger Games premiere. I did have a couple things. I had a Mockingjay pin and I had a PETA shirt.
Okay.
So I wore those. That's the start of the outfit, Madison. I need you to visualize.
Okay, that's the start of the fit.
That's the start of the fit. Okay. And we're going to work our way down, and then we're going to work our way back up. So we've got the top, the PETA shirt and the Mockingjay pin. The bottom, a pair of shorts, a pair of old denim shorts. I took a Sharpie to them. On one leg, I wrote #1 Hunger Games fan.
Oh my gosh.
And on the other leg, I wrote PETA forever. And drew, like, a disgustingly crude... I'm not an artist. I'm not, and I have terrible handwriting.
Handwriting is awful. It's literally so terrible.
I have horrid penmanship. And
it's so bad.
And I'm not an artist. So I drew the ugliest fucking Mockingjay pin on these pants.
God. Do you still have them?
God, no. Of course not.
Okay.
I don't, like, you just have to
Do
take
a picture of this?
No. I did.
Damn it. I wanted to post it.
I used to have a picture of at least me, and I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the pants, right?
That's the pants.
And then we're gonna work our way back up.
Okay.
I can't braid either. I'm not very good at a lot of things. I can't braid. And at the time, I believe I had, like, shoulder length hair.
You did. You had choppy bangs and shoulder length hair.
Bangs that I cut myself. I was the classic. When people talk about, like, a cringy middle school experience, I was a classic. I was to a T. Like, I
love you so much, but you were.
I was. One of my best friends told me in high school. I'm getting off track, but I gotta say this. One of my best friends in high school, I'm one of those people who's like, I wonder what everyone thinks about me. So every once in a while, I will ask people, like, what was your first impression of me?
What did you think about me?
Or whatever.
Yeah.
My best friend looked at me. I asked her this question, what was your first impression of me, or what did you think of me in middle school, or whatever. She looked at me and she said, not gonna lie, I would go to the other side of the hallway to avoid being near you because I thought you were that weird. And I said, ouch.
Ouch.
But fair.
Oh my god.
But fair. I was weird. I was so weird. Listen.
You were.
I maintain to this day I should have been bullied more. And I don't know how I wasn't. I don't know how I wasn't.
You weren't quite to the level where, like,
bullied.
You weren't. So, like, there's different levels, I'd say. Like, there's that kid who would, like, remember that kid who shaved her eyebrows for a...
Yes!
I forget her name. But she shaved her eyebrows off
her name.
For a pack of ramen noodles.
About. Yes. And then I asked her, why did you do that? She said, my eyebrows itched. And I said, what? What? She told me that we were mortal enemies. She said, she also is the same girl who, like, threw her dog out a window.
Yes! I forgot about that!
And, like, crushed a cat with a bed.
Yes!
Like, this girl was like, next level.
Literally insane. Like, if anyone was going to be a serial killer, it was her. It was
my favorite story about this girl. My favorite story about this girl. We sound so mean right now making fun of this girl. It's so true.
But, like, I was genuinely scared, Hailey. I was genuinely afraid of this person. I was afraid that this person was going to set fire to our school.
Yeah, there were kids I was definitely afraid of. But she, like, it was a 9/11, like, moment of silence. And she farted. Oh my God. So it was... We're gonna have to cut this part. We're too mean. We just talked last week about how we're good people, and here we are being like, oh my gosh, this girl.
Hailey, she shaved her eyebrows off for a pack of ramen noodles.
I don't even know if it was the noodles or if it was the seasoning.
It was the seasoning. That is right. It wasn't even the noodles. It was just the seasoning packet. I fucking forgot about that. Anyway, so you were not at that level. An enigma. Like, that is the kind of girl who, like, would bark. Literally, she would bark at people in the halls.
Yeah, like, there's a difference between
like, that's why I was
me
afraid.
And the kid that hissed.
Hailey, I went from Christian school, a class of 20 people, where I was the rebel because my parents were divorced, and I watched The Simpsons. I was the rebel. I went from that to a public school where this girl shaved her eyebrows off for a packet of ramen noodles and fucking barked at me in the hallway. Like, what the fuck? I was traumatized.
Anyway, where was I?
I'm so sorry.
Because I haven't even finished describing this fit of mine. Anyway, so I'm bad at braiding, right? And I have the choppy bangs and I've got this shoulder length hair, but I think I can do the Katniss braid no problem.
Oh my gosh.
It is this shitty, ugly ass, small ass side braid. In quotations, I would say. Like, it is not cute.
I think I remember this.
And the cherry on top of this entire ensemble, so since we got away from it so much.
Rebuild it.
PETA shirt
from
Hot Topic, Mockingjay pin. Shorts that say, like, #1 Hunger Games fan and have this ugly ass Mockingjay drawn on it. The shitty Katniss braid, the cherry on top. I'm wearing a blue headband, like a bright, like a neon blue headband. And I wrote, again, horrible penmanship. I think I just rewrote #1 Hunger Games fan on it. And I think I drew the Mockingjay on the headband, too. And it looked bad. It was a bad look. But I thought I looked so fucking sick. I was like, I'm basically, like, you know, like, really cool people who, like, if you had said I looked like Katniss Everdeen, I would have said, damn right I do.
Oh, my God.
I would have said, fuck yeah. I thought I was like, Jennifer Lawrence who? I am here. Like, I thought I looked so fucking sick.
If someone would have told you, Hailey, this ain't it, would you have believed them?
No. I thought...
love that for you. I love that for you. I truly do. Madison, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. I can't. So I'm
middle
happy
school
for you.
Hailey was this blend. Okay, she was this blend of deep self-consciousness and just utter confidence.
Yes,
sheer
it was both.
Confidence.
It was both. I don't give a fuck about anyone, what they think about me, and like I literally will cry if you shoot me a look
or mean to me. Yeah. Yes. Like, I had a whole YouTube channel that I thought was the coolest thing.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this.
It's not there anymore.
Hailey,
no! It's gone. It's gone.
Hailey, please. Did you delete all of those videos?
Yep. I don't have any of them anymore.
Hailey, no! Oh my gosh, those were golden.
None of them.
Hailey,
for
why
you.
did you do that?
Oh, no, Madison, there is still a shred. No, I have some of them are still out there, Madison, unfortunately. The one that you're thinking of, the one that you love so much, it's still out there.
Hailey, can I please share this with people?
No!
Can I please link this? I want to link it.
No! Absolutely not. No. There is a shred of who I used to be out in the world, and
you deleted everything else.
Everything else is gone.
Did you delete the doll one?
No. That's the one... don't. Madison Epley, I swear to God.
Hailey, it's like my favorite thing in the world. It's so good.
If you link it, we are not friends anymore.
Hailey,
I will be pissed. I will be pissed.
But like, what if people find it on their own?
If people find it on their own, then that's on them. But like, they don't need help.
I want to help them. Listen, Hailey, everyone deserves to see it. Everyone does. No. You
just love me embarrassing myself.
I love you so. Hailey, one of my favorite videos that you sent me was you dancing to the "On the 9th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me." It's a 10-second video.
You still have that. You still have that somewhere.
I love it. It pops up every now and again, and it makes me pee my pants. It's so fucking funny.
I'm glad you think so.
I do. This made my day.
You do that.
I will.
Have fun, buddy.
Guys, if you can find it on your own, try to look up Hailey on YouTube and look for the dolls. That's all I'm gonna say.
I wonder if that's gonna help them at all.
Maybe. Listen, if you're someone who can stalk people like I am, I'm a professional internet sleuth. Thank you. Like, my friend Drew at work, he told me about a girl he was going on a date with. He gave me her name and an interest of hers, and I found her right away. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. And he's like, you found her? And I'm like, yeah. Like, you didn't know this about... Like, before I started dating David has no social media. I knew his first and last name and that he came from Canadians. That was it. But he had no social media himself. I dug hard. Literally hours. I found his whole family. I found his mom, his dad, his sister. I was looking at pictures of him when he was in high school. I found it all. I sound like a stalker. I am kind of. If you give me you don't even have to give me a name. That's the scary part. If you give me a description of somebody and like a couple things about them, I will find them online. I will tell you their cousins, their parents. I will tell you where they went to school, where they live. It's scary.
Madison, we need to start putting a cap on our recaps because we are almost 40 minutes in. And we have not...
It's fine. Luckily, I'm editing it, so don't worry.
So, today I am going to be talking about the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Do you know anything about this man?
I don't know, do I?
You might know... Once I get into it, there are a couple things you might recognize, but I don't... It's not super well known outside of the, like, true crime community.
All right.
So a little background. Brandon Swanson was a native of Lyon County in southwestern Minnesota, and he graduated from Marshall High School in 2007. He chose to study wind turbines for a year at the Minnesota West Community and Technical College campus in Canby, Minnesota. May 13th, 2008 was the last day of classes, and the next day Swanson went to 2 different parties celebrating the end of the school year. Even though friends observed Swanson drinking alcoholic beverages, they later said that they did not believe he had drank enough to make him seem visibly intoxicated. Swanson left Canby for the 30-mile drive home just before midnight, And just before 2 a.m., he called his parents on his cell phone and told them that he had driven his Chevrolet Lumina off the road and into a ditch, and he could not remove the car. But he was not hurt, and he asked that they come get him. His parents, Annette and Brian, got in their pickup truck and drove out to where they thought he was, and they managed to keep him on the phone despite occasional hang-ups and call drops. Brandon stayed with his car and tried to signal them by flashing his lights on and off, but they didn't see anything, and he also did not see them. Okay. After a while, Brandon finally gave up and told them he was leaving the car to walk towards some lights he could see that led him to believe he was near Lind, which was a small town roughly 7 miles southwest of Marshall. And Marshall is the town that he grew up in. Mm-hmm. He told his father to head for the parking lot of a local bar and to wait for him there. Brian began driving there and talked to Brandon as he did so.
Again, he has a cell phone?
Yes, okay. They are currently on the phone together. Like, they are, this whole time, they are talking on the phone. Shortly after 2:30 a.m., 47 minutes into the call, Brandon suddenly interrupted himself on the phone and said, "Oh, shit!" He was silent for a remainder of the call until his parents hung up and made multiple attempts to call him back. Brandon has not been seen or heard from since.
Fuck.
At 6:30 a.m., his parents reported Brandon missing to the Lind police. And they were told at first that it was hardly unusual for men that age to stay out all night after the last day of college classes. And Annette Swanson, Brandon's mother, specifically recalled one of the officers saying it was Brandon's right to be missing.
That's so fucking irritating.
Later that morning, the Lind police did start a search, but found no trace of Brandon in the town or outside. They requested that the Office of Lyon County Sheriff Joel Dahl assist them. To better focus the search, the sheriff's office obtained Brandon's cell phone records, which revealed that Brandon had been calling from the vicinity of Taunton along State Highway 68, which was northwest of Marshall and 25 miles from Lind. So, Brandon had believed that he was near Lind.
Yeah.
The night before when he went missing. Turns out he was 25 miles away from it.
In the opposite direction. Didn't you say that he grew up there? He was familiar with the area?
He was familiar. He lived in Marshall.
Okay.
Which is described as a seat of Lyon County, which I guess I don't know how to I guess like a suburb.
Like a borough?
I guess. A borough.
Okay.
Suburb, something like that. I would compare it to a town that, like, the town we lived in growing up.
Okay.
Like, it's not an official town, but it's like...
Yeah, I think that's called a borough.
Yeah, it's probably what it is. So he was in the borough of Marshall. Okay, but now, see, this is telling me it's a city. Oh, Jesus, whatever.
Whatever it is.
Whatever this place is. So, Marshall is about 7 miles... I guess it would be northwest of Lind.
Okay.
So, it's relatively close.
He was close.
He thought he was.
Okay.
He felt that he was. But it turned out, according to his phone records, that he was around Taunton, which was about 25 miles from Lind.
Jeez.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry, this bag of coins.
What is happening?
This bag of coins was open and I didn't know that, so I'm gonna have to clean those up.
How do you have a bag of coins?
They're my boyfriend's. I was just gonna, jingle them a little.
Why are there coins in a bag?
I don't know, Madison. All I know is I gotta clean them up. I think they're special.
What the hell?
I don't know. I think they're, from different countries or something.
What?
Okay, I don't even remember where I was.
You were talking about...
Okay, searching in the area, deputies discovered Brandon's abandoned car in a ditch off a gravel road along the Lincoln County line a mile north of Highway 68. They brought the office of that county's sheriff, Jack Vizecki, into the investigation as well. He told the media that the Lumina had gotten hung up on the top of an incline at the edge of the road, but not seriously enough to damage the car, but just enough to keep the wheels from touching the ground on that side. So, kind of like what happened to me my senior year of high school.
When you drove off
When I drove off a driveway. There was nothing else found amiss with the car, and due to the grass and gravel in the area surrounding it, there were no tracks and thus no way to tell what direction Brandon might have started walking. So the cell phone call was routed through a tower at the intersection of County Routes 3 and 10 near Minneota, which is another town. Minneota, Minnesota. I want to live there. By May 15th, the call had been determined to come from within 5 miles of the tower, and searchers were concentrating their efforts there. Since part of that circle included Yellow Madison County to the north, authorities from that jurisdiction also took part. None of the places in Minnesota sound real. Joel Dahl, who I mentioned earlier, noted that around the area a red light atop a Taunton grain elevator could be seen, and he thought it was possible that the red light Brandon had seen had led him to believe that Lind was within walking distance.
Okay.
Ground searches were being done, as well as flyover searches by an aerial team. Search dogs were also brought in from the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. A team of bloodhounds from nearby Codington County, South Dakota, picked up a 3-mile scent trail that largely followed the field's roads northwest to an abandoned farm, then along the Yellow Madison River to a point where it appeared to enter the stream. Brandon had mentioned passing fences and hearing nearby water, his father recalled. On the theory that Brandon might have drowned, boats from the state's Department of Natural Resources were deployed along the river, and gates were installed. In some areas in Lincoln County, the water had been 10 feet deep the morning of the disappearance, but they had gone down since then. Deputies also walked the riverbanks, and horses and all-terrain vehicles were deployed in the surrounding area. However, Dahl ruled out a more organized, extensive ground search. Don't ask me why he ruled it out. Doesn't really say.
I was gonna say, that doesn't make any sense. You have the dogs, they have a scent. Why would you not keep trying to look for that scent or, look around the area of the scent?
Some people believe that Swanson, fell into the river and washed downstream, but it was noted that the dog went through the river and up the other side, and his body was also never recovered.
Yeah.
And in fall of 2021, the Yellow Madison River dried up as a result of a drought. And law enforcement carried out an excavation that produced nothing.
Shit.
So
again, why would they not check outside of the river?
I think
if you said that the dogs went on the other side. Why are people not looking on that other side?
The dog just lost his scent after a while. They never found any personal property or clothing. He just kind of vanished. There was a tip line set up in about 2010, and by 2015, 90 leads had been reported. The area of interest had moved towards Mud Creek, which is a tributary of the Yellow Madison north and northwest of Porter. That's really all the information that they have. There's no physical evidence recovered. His cell phone, his car keys, his clothing. Nothing.
They don't have any theories besides drowning when the drought came?
Not real. So, some people were wondering if he staged his own disappearance, but that doesn't seem
because he was calling he was calling for his parents to get him. He was on the phone with them.
Yeah. So that doesn't seem likely.
No.
One theory suggests that Swanson experienced a mental breakdown or died by suicide, but his parents said that during their last phone call with him, he sounded coherent and did not seem to be impaired.
And again, he was asking for help.
Yeah. He's been missing for almost 15 years now.
Jeez Louise.
And, these kind of unsolved cases to me are always strange because I always believed that there has to be at least one person out there besides the person that disappeared that knows what happened.
And that's the thing. There usually is.
There's got to be one person out there.
There has to be someone.
And the fact that we may never know is so unsettling.
It is so unsettling. And it's unsettling to know that not just that, but you don't know who this person is. You could be walking by them every day.
Yeah.
You know?
There is one good thing that came of his disappearance, though. After the searches, his mother, Annette, was still kind of grappling with the idea that the police believed that her son had a right to be missing when she told them, how old he was. So she and her husband, Brandon's father, Brian, began lobbying for changes in state law that would require an investigation into the case of a missing adult to begin as soon as it is reported.
Good.
That is how it was with only missing child cases, abducted children. Yeah. Those had to be investigated as soon as reported, but
and
missing
for those
adults.
Of you who don't know, in any state, if something is not right, you do not, contrary to popular belief, you do not have to wait 24 or 48 hours to report, because those are the most crucial hours to find a missing person. The first 48 are the most important hours. So even if you're not being heard or you are being brushed off, keep pushing. The police, they need to do their job, and you have a right to, put weight on them to do that.
Yep. So Annette met with Marty Seifert, who was the minority leader of the State House of Representatives at the time, and his district included Marshall, and he introduced a bill called Brandon's Law that would make the required change by amending the law governing the state's existing missing child program to change the word child to person. The law enforcement community had some pushback on it because of, privacy issues, especially, regarding cell phones.
Yeah, I understand, everyone wanting to protect their privacy, but if something isn't right and people are worried, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Right. The bill ended up passing, and it is now a law. So we now have Brandon's Law, I believe, is just delegated to Minnesota, but 4 other states have passed similar laws. Seifert considers the bill to be one of the most important bills I authored in my 14 years. It will save lives. So even though we don't know where Brandon Swanson is, we don't know what happened, there is still some good that came of it through Brandon's Law. So that's good.
Yeah, there's that at least. I hope that his parents can find comfort in that at least, they were able to do something.
Yeah. It makes me sad.
Yeah. Well, and unknowing is the worst part of it all. What movie was that with Sandra Bullock and Kiefer Sutherland?
Oh, I don't know.
There was a person who was saying the worst thing you could do to somebody is, leave them unknowing, and it was Kiefer Sutherland, and he was looking for his girlfriend or fiance Sandra Bullock, and she just disappeared one day. And it's a movie about him trying to find her and figure out what happened to her. And that has always stuck with me ever since I watched that when I was little. And I think it is you don't get any rest, you don't get answers, you don't get to you can't even have a funeral. You can have them declared dead, but you don't actually have a body or closure. You have to make your own closure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously no matter what, it's just awful, but I feel I would I don't know if I would rather have a family member or a loved one be murdered and I know that they're murdered, or
well, that's the thing, you can at least try to get justice for them if you had those answers, but when you don't have any answers, there is no justice to be done. If there is justice that needs to be done at all, you just have all these question marks. You are left questioning about the person's mental state. You're left questioning about, if something did happen, who did it, and is that person still out there?
Right.
It's terrifying.
Disappearances like this are always hard. So, I hope we know what happens someday.
And that's the thing too. So many cases, there's most cases when they're solved, it's not just a smoking gun that gives it away. Usually it is the little things that build to something bigger. It's rarely ever a smoking gun. So if you know anything, or if you think you might know anything, it could be worthwhile. Okay, are you ready for my story?
Yes.
I have got a doozy today. So I'm going to tell you the story about Phil Williams Jr. and the Élan school. Do you know about this?
No.
Okay, well, buckle up because you are in for a ride.
Okay.
So, Phil and Pam Newell were 9 and 6, respectively, when their father went to jail for conspiracy to commit murder and assault with intent to murder. His ex-wife, the children's mother, was the victim, unfortunately. She received multiple bashes to the head with a pipe. She survived, but unfortunately the pipe attack was so severe that she remained unresponsive and in a nursing home for 28 years until the end of her life. Pam and Phil became wards of the state of Maine and were transferred to a foster home together, which at least, they were able to stay together, which is very rare, especially for the time. By 1982, Phil grew into a teenager. He was wild, very handsome. His sister recalled how close they were. They were inseparable, and she said that she would remember how mad she would get when all her friends and fellow students would fawn over him because he had this beautiful curly hair, he had this chiseled jaw. She said that he did have a problem with his temper, and he would go into fits of rage, such as banging his head against the walls and throwing his foster brother into the couch. And these fits of rage were seemingly triggered by frequent intense migraines he suffered. He has always suffered very, very intense headaches, and that would seemingly be the cause of his temper because he'd be in so much pain. Again, not an excuse, but just an important note. So to cool off and correct his behavior, he was sent to the Maine Youth Center, and then he was transferred to the Élan school in Poland, Maine. His sister was told that the Élan school was an upgrade and that he could actually get the help he needed there and come home. It was like a behavioral correctional facility. Shortly after he was transferred to Élan, around Christmas time, the family was informed that Phil had a brain aneurysm that exploded into his head. Phil was dead. Only 12 at the time, Pam was shocked when she heard this news. Her father was released from prison in order to attend his son's funeral, and it took both the father and Pam's foster father to hold her back from climbing into Phil's coffin. She just wanted to be with her brother. Like I said, they were inseparable, wherever that was. Fast forward 33 years later, 2016. Pam is living still without her brother, making her own way in life, trying to cope, when one day, she's approached by a man named Mark Babbitts. Mark Babbitts lives outside of Chicago. He owns his own construction company, and he's been living as a bounty hunter for over 30 years. And he also attended Élan, the same school Phil was sent to, and he has shocking news for Pam. He says that Phil did not die of a brain aneurysm like she had been told, and he had 2 witnesses to corroborate that. According to the witnesses, Phil had been forced into Élan's infamous boxing ring as punishment because he complained he had a headache. School officials thought he was faking to try to get out of work, so they put him through this punishment where other students would take turns beating him up until he eventually collapsed, started to spasm, and turned blue. Eventually, staff took him away and he was dead within a day. Although some details from these witnesses differ, the stories are the same. Obviously, this person coming out of the blue 33 years later, Pam is in shock. She never even thought about questioning how Phil died. It seemed likely at the time he had frequent headaches, throughout his childhood, and I even had an appointment for him to see a specialist whenever he got back from Élan or very shortly thereafter. So it seemed like it could be likely, even though it is, it's only 15 years old. So, despite that, she knew that she needed to be a voice for her brother. How was this the first time she was hearing of this? 33 years later, how did she not know? So now I'm going to give you some background about the Élan school. Élan was a private boarding school and behavioral modification program that operated from 1970 to 2011. It was finally shut down after decades of alleged abuse from former students, who call themselves survivors, rightfully so. As reference, Pam was only notified about her brother in the treatment in the school in 2016, which was 5 years after it had closed. Élan was founded in 1970 by psychiatrists Gerald Davidson and Joe Ricci. Joe Ricci was a former heroin addict who was familiar with drug treatment programs, but he himself had never gone to college. It was located in Poland, Maine, a very secluded place out in the woods, and it was first a rehab facility for adults dealing with substance abuse, but Ricci finally envisioned the school as a last stop, a last resort for parents whose children struggled with behavioral and psychological issues. And that's where they shifted their focus. Children from 8th to 12th grade. Ricci explained, quote, "These are not your typical public school kids. Their parents bring them here to succeed when everything else has failed." The method for reformation was based on Ricci's own experience in a drug rehab facility. He became addicted to drugs at age 12, And at 18, he was arrested for robbing a mail truck, and he was given a choice of 7 years behind bars or rehab, and he chose the latter. The rehab center he went to adopted confrontational or, quote, attack therapy, which was founded in a cult named the Church of Sinan. And although the cult eventually crumbled, as cults typically do, its attack therapy methods for treating substance abuse had a substantial reach. With the unlikely ragtag duo of psychiatrist and former drug addict, the Élan school enormous attention and reverence from the beginning. The school was for all troubled teens, but there was definitely a money grab at wealthy Americans who wanted success for their troubled children. When the school closed in 2011, it was charging parents $55,000 a year per student. And I pulled this actually off of the Élan website. I will read you what it says when the website was still online. Welcome to Élan School. Dear parents, we are very aware of how lonely and confused you must feel as you sit down to read this. If you feel like the parents of our students, you are faced with an adolescent whose behavior is out of control and you don't know why. A youngster who has been given everything and is throwing it away is difficult to understand, but you can see that this process is progressive. The most saddening part is knowing that your offspring is ruining his or her future. Your own pain is difficult, but the pain for your child is unbearable. By coming to Élan, you have come to a truly different school. We cannot offer you miracles, but we can offer you hope. We know your journey to this point has been painful. We hope Élan can change its course. Sharon Terry, Executive Director. She is the wife of Joe Ricci. So that's what you see when you first go on the website. And again, they definitely targeted it towards wealthy Americans whose maybe spoiled children who were given everything are, acting out and having behavioral issues. That was their main focus, but they did have wards of the state like Phil Newell who had their tuition paid for if they were a special case. So, this was a year-round school out in the woods. It almost sounds like a summer camp. Not that I've ever been because I was poor and I could never afford to go. But for parents who wanted this for their children, it sounded like a great opportunity. The parents would arrange a pickup with the school, but the children, to them, it was a surprise. It was a kidnapping, even. Transporters would go into the child's room in the middle of the night, handcuff them, force them into a van, and begin a long drive to Poland, Maine. They'd usually arrive early in the morning. The children would be met with students wearing humiliating signs, in handcuffs, and beating each other up. The first order of business is that all new admits were stripped of their personal items, clothing, and forced to shower together, which the lack of privacy was the very first step in the dehumanization process. They were given no-name clothing, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is just plain, beige, boring colored clothing that cannot identify you, so everyone looks the same, so you blend in. They were then assigned a big brother, who was supposed to help them adjust, get acquainted with the rules, and be someone just to generally rely on as they transitioned here to Élan. But in reality, it was a much darker relationship. These big brothers were actually informants, often suggesting students run away or break the rules in some way. And if the student ever took them up on this and agreed to do these things, the big brother would report them and the child would be punished. Students were not allowed to communicate with anyone outside of the school unless they showed good behavior and compliance, which you will see later on was nearly impossible. For those who did connect with their family, they were heavily monitored. Their calls were monitored, obviously. Any letters sent out were always read and monitored. And if they said anything against the school, they would be punished, and they would never be able to contact their family again until it was their time to leave. There were 3 core rules at Élan: no drugs, no sex, no violence, but there were a variety of other rules that were impossible to follow. These rules were called guilt. And so this list is extensive, but just to give you an example of how impossible these rules were to follow, I will read you some of them. Writing or drawing without permission. Talking too loudly. Talking too softly. Looking at the opposite gender. Being attracted to someone. Having any image. Wearing dark clothing. Being quote-unquote sideways, whatever that means. looking at security zones, any physical contact, looking out windows, pretending to sleep at night, thinking of running away, being in the bathroom for too long, too much or too little talking, showering for more than 3 minutes, making facial reactions to orders, negative body language, oversleeping, undersleeping, smiling, and more. So again, these rules were impossible to follow. There's no way that students could follow these, and any infraction could get them punished. Students would then be forced to write guilt letters to their parents, which would consist of praising the school, telling them how bad they've been, telling them how they were learning and getting better. And this would keep the parents paying for their education since, things sounded like they were going so well. At Élan, there were 5 categories of jobs that students had to do while they were working there. Service, who did mostly cleaning and janitorial work. Kitchen, who dealt with meal responsibilities. Business, where the students would deal with various paperwork. Communications, where the residents would relay outside news and take on somewhat of like a managerial role. And then expediters, who essentially policed other residents. And students were split into this caste system of 2 groups. You had the strengths and the non-strengths. And the whole goal was to get people to be pitted against each other. So strengths were students who had been at the school for at least 6 months to a year, although just because you'd been there for a while doesn't mean you'd ever become a strength. Some never became a strength. Strengths were respected, and they were, again, essentially the police for the school. And it went even beyond that. They had to spy on their peers. They were supposed to rat on students if they were breaking any of the rules or showing, quote-unquote, guilt. The way you'd make your way up this caste system is by reporting on others and monitoring others. And so, if you began to rat somebody out, you could make your way up and earn those responsibilities. A good strength was one who was constantly catching non-strengths, being guilty or acquiring guilt, catching them doing whatever it was. No proof was needed. You just simply needed to it was your word over theirs, and then they would be punished. Strengths were given a clipboard with a sheet of paper that must be completely filled out by the end of the day with reports of other students. If they did not have it filled, they were accused of not being aware enough, and they could be demoted to a non-strength, which would have all their permissions and power stripped away, and along with them being punished. So what did strengths do? Obviously started making up things to protect themselves. You could, with all the rules that there were, you could be as little as a glance, and you could interpret that in however way you wanted to. So some of the categories of these guilts in this clipboard were split risks, which were people accused of trying to or planning on running away. Even if they just thought you were thinking about running away, you could be punished for it. Isolators, people who wanted to be left alone. Unlike jail, you couldn't just keep your head down and do your time. You had to play their game or you were going to get punished. Speaking of playing games, game players. This is their code for being attracted to someone else. Strengths would spy on non-strengths and report on anything they considered to even be an inkling of interest. It could be a glance at someone of the opposite gender. It could be anything. Contracts. These were people who were plotting something, anything. If you're too close to anyone, this could be seen as suspicious. But remember, you can't be isolated either. You have to interact with people so that you're not seen as isolator. Reactors. This is a reaction to any kind of order, a demand, a task, really, honestly, anything. If someone doesn't like how you reacted to anything, they could write that down. Anything can get you in trouble. You're constantly walking on eggshells and you're never safe, unless you're a strength. And the only way to be a strength is to rat on people and be seen as reliable. And that's what people did to survive. Non-strengths were at the mercy of the strengths in every way. You were only allowed to speak with strengths and only in limited amounts. If you so much as looked in the direction of another non-strength, you couldn't even say bless you to them if they sneezed. If you even so much as whispered to a non-strength, you'd be accused of conspiring with them. Again, you couldn't do anything. You had to do enough to not be seen as an isolator, but not too much that you weren't seen as someone who was conspiring. So now for the punishments. All the punishments focused on humiliation, and they varied in severity. Some lesser punishments were extra chores, like cleaning a toilet with a toothbrush for hours. sometimes, but this escalated to wearing humiliating costumes and reports of one student even living in a dumpster for 2 weeks. If you were punished, it was common that approval of 6 to 7 expediters, the people who are ratting on you, the strengths, was necessary before you were allowed to use the restroom during your punishment. And then, even then, an escort had to watch you. You didn't have any privacy. So some of these costumes people were forced to wear. A dunce hat was very common. If you don't know what a dunce hat is, it's like an old-timey, very tall white cone you kind of wear on your head. That was often used as punishment for smiling out of place or being lazy with work. One student suggested that they get a house dog, and Élan decided that he would be the dog. So he was forced to wear a dog costume, and he could only bark. 1 bark meant yes, 2 barks meant no, and he had to walk on all 4s and eat dinner out of a dog dish. He had a collar and a leash on too. People who acted like quote-unquote babies were forced to wear a diaper, a bonnet, and carry a rattle. And one girl was caught breaking a rule related to sex, and she was forced to dress up as a stereotypical sex worker and made to strut around and dance. And I couldn't find out what this was, but I am thinking it was something small, like kissing someone or having a boyfriend. It definitely was not sex. It was something very small. Nothing actually happened. If you were caught running away, you were forced to wear a bright t-shirt so you could be easily seen, and shoes without laces so you couldn't run very far. If you were a repeat offender of this, the punishment would be more extreme. One student was forced to wear a pink onesie while sitting outside and handcuffs around his ankles. Wearing degrading signs around your neck was a very popular and common punishment as well. One of these signs worn around a young girl's neck read, quote, "My name is Phyllis Cohen. I behave like an emotional cripple. I constantly seek people's attention and try to get them to prove they care about me. I play games and continually usurp people's emotions in order to make myself feel special. Please confront me, because if I don't change my attitude, I will always be the scared and lonely person I am now." That's just one example of the things they were forced to wear. A former student reportedly said that he remembers the humiliation and something called cowboy kick-ass, where students would be repeatedly pushed up into walls until they were bruising, but that was just the beginning of the physical abuse. One of the worst punishments was an incredibly common one, and it was called a general meeting. It could happen anytime, any place, for any infraction, smiling too much, literally anything, no matter how big or small. Staff would simply have to shout, "General meeting," and students would run and gather around the person being punished and just call them names, yell obscenities, just humiliate them. And the staff member would yell, "Get your feelings off," and they would ramp up the verbal abuse. They would, shout slurs and other things. And this could go on for sometimes an hour or more. The infamous ring that Phil was put into could also be called at any time. And again, the involved student would be forced to stand in the middle of a circle where students would yell at them and berate them. But in addition to this, the student had to wear a face guard and boxing gloves, and they were called the bully. Staff would then force other students to compete against them until they decided that the bully was sufficiently injured. So you just have to fight them. They would just make you fight each other. So remember, Ricci did believe in education, and that would happen, but it was very secondhand to punishment. It was not given as much weight, and there were no legitimate exams. It was really only students grading themselves on assignments on which they were given no directions. Schooling itself was thought of as a privilege, and it only took place between the hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., but it was often extended way later into the night. And this is planned on purpose. Ricci stated that he believed that students would be easier to control and manipulate if they were sleep deprived. Students slept in uncomfortable, military-esque bunk beds, and they were watched by night owls who would shine a flashlight around the room to make sure that they didn't escape and to make sure they were actually asleep, because remember, that is a punishable effect. If you sleep too much or too little, you can be punished. If you're pretending to be asleep, you could be punished. Controversies. Obviously, there are controversies here. In 1975, 5 years after the school first opened up, the state of Illinois pulled 11 students from the program alleging mistreatment. These were much like Phil. They were wards of the state. They were sent there for help, and they had heard about the mistreatment, and they pulled their students. This was only 5 years after it opened, though, and it was open over 30 years later. It began to unravel in 2002. There was a murder trial where Michael Skakel, he was a cousin of the Kennedys, like those Kennedys, yes, and he had been accused of murdering his neighbor, Martha Moxley. The trial was very big at the time, and during it, witnesses testified that he had heard Michael admit to killing Martha. One former schoolmate even testified in a pretrial hearing that Michael Skakel told him, "I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy." However, Skakel said that the confession was coerced through the boxing ring punishment he received while he was at Élan. So, was this a false confession or was this real? That's kind of his defense to that. The New York State Education Department had paid for special students to attend the school and gave it a glowing review in 2005. In 2007, officials began to question the school's practices, which was 30 years later, and they began to threaten to withdraw tuition funding for the students that it paid for. And again, students would run away from Élan. One time, former Sheriff's Office Captain Ray LaFrance stated that Élan would send groups in vans to search for and return runaways, and noted that the school only called police to report missing students as a last resort. LaFrance said that some runaways would be relieved to be found after spending nights in the woods, though others, quote, were scared to death to go back to Élan. If we really felt they were really scared, we'd bring them to the department, call their parents, and at least let them know what was going on. Then we'd call Élan and have them come pick them up, end quote. For decades, the school administrators of Élan denied everything and dismissed the allegations, and one of their lawyers defended Élan's tactics, saying, quote, "People who fought in wars have nightmares too. Some wars are worth fighting." Ricci died of lung cancer in the early 2000s, and his wife Sharon Terry took over until it closed in 2011. Stories of Élan were spread all over forums on the internet, Reddit specifically. Other survivors were able to meet each other, tell their stories, and have someone to connect with, and this is where Phil's story was revealed. 4 months after these stories, particularly the one about Phil, came viral, Sharon Terry said that due to declining enrollment and resulting financial difficulties, she would have to close the school. Now, bouncing back to Phil. Bounty Hunter Babbitts was contacted about the story because of the Reddit forum online that were circulating. He found Phil's death certificate, which was missing some information, incomplete. He found Phil's family, and he found a witness. Anne Bowen was another former student of Élan. She was 15 years old, and she recalled how much everyone liked Phil. She didn't say explicitly, but it sounds like she was a strength based on the privileges that she had. So she recalls one evening before Christmas, staff members ordered Phil to fight with another student, another tactic, again, enforced by Ricci. Just anytime, just students just had to fight each other. He said that he didn't feel good. He said that he had a headache, and they thought that he was trying to manipulate the system, so they forced him to fight in the ring for 3 rounds. Anne recalled that Phil did not fight back, and because he didn't fight back, if you didn't fight back, you were forced to stay in there longer. Phil was trying to protect his head. He was in pain. He was defeated. He was getting the shit beat out of him. She said that she spent most of the fight looking away, and she recalled that Phil was led into an office and told to have a seat afterwards. She was supposed to guard the door for him. When she looked inside, she saw Phil with his hands over his head and curled up in the corner. She asked if he was okay, and again he repeated, "No, I have a very bad headache and I don't feel so good." So Bowen left to go get staff so that Phil could have something for his headache. She said, quote, "The staff member asked me what the hell I was doing getting up from the chair without permission and told me that he would take care of it when he got the chance. This was a staff member. This was an adult." He continued joking around again and laughing. I went back down and sat in the chair. Less than 5 minutes later, Bowen said that she heard kicking around in the office. So she peeked in, and she saw Phil convulsing and spasming on the floor, vomiting. Phil lay on the floor for an hour, before being removed by staff, not an ambulance, for medical attention. And again, like I said, for Phil's family, an aneurysm made sense. He had a history of these headaches long before Élan, all throughout his life. So he thought they thought this could happen. Unlikely, but that it could happen. Because it had been 33 years after this had happened, after Phil's death, doctors and staff members who signed off on things either can't be found or are dead. Records are missing or incomplete. And police did finish their investigation, but unfortunately, they said that there's not enough evidence to charge anyone with Phil's death. There are still people coming out with stories about Élan. And this is also, I want to shed light on, just in general, the troubled teen industry, because more often than not, these are for-profit industries, and they often don't have the kids' best interests in heart. Their best interest is to make money. So frequently there is abuse that goes on in these types of industries, and it seems it seems far away, because it started in the 70s, and you can think back to the Stanford prison experiment and think that these things are so far beyond us, but it closed in 2011. That is not that far away, and there are still many other troubled teen businesses like this that are being unreported. So I actually found a woman. Her name is Tara, and her screen name is Ally Obsidian. And she has a podcast about her abuse. She was an Élan survivor as well. It's on Apple Podcasts. I'm going to link it as well. It's called Surviving the Troubled Teen Industry, Introducing TTI Survivors, and it features a bunch of people who did survive, their own stories from different places that they were placed. She has an Instagram and a Twitter that we have followed, and yeah, she looks like she's doing some really great things and is being a voice for people who don't have voices, and based on her experience. So I thought that was a really awesome, powerful thing that she's doing, and I think that's just an important thing that we should have more light shed on. And, how are these things going unnoticed for so long? It's messed up.
Yeah, I've heard of, have you heard of, like, the wilderness camp
types?
I haven't. There are types of these troubled teen industries where they're, like, a wilderness camp. And it's straight up, like, people have described it as, like, they're basically kidnapped and from their homes and taken to these camps, these work camps, and like, yeah, there's a lot of
I mean, it sounds so silly, but like, look at Holes. I mean, it's a fictional story, but like, places like that exist. That's not far off from reality. And not just that, but it kind of goes into help me, Guff Puff, what's it called? People who are trying to get you to not be gay anymore.
Conversion therapy.
Thank you. Conversion therapy camps, for teenagers especially. It's traumatizing. That's part of the troubled teen industry. From, people see that as being troubled. It's just one part of it. And I think it's so important to talk about. And one thing I also wanted to mention, because it was so irritating when I was doing this research, because I kept seeing people referring to these children as women and men, and they were not. They were not women and men. They were children. Just because you are in 12th grade doesn't make you an adult.
Yeah.
18 is not an adult.
Yeah.
Just because you're legally an adult. And these students were from 8th to 12th grade. 8th to 12th grade. You are not a woman. You're not a man. You are a child. So that's another important thing I wanted to make mention of, because all of these articles kept saying these men, these women, maybe they're talking about present tense, now they're men and women, but then they were children when this stuff happened to them.
Right.
Sorry for going on a tangent with my soapbox, but I remember hearing that story last year, and it kind of came up again this year. I heard about it like a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to bring it up because it's very important. But yeah. thanks for listening, everybody. We hope that you liked this episode. If you have topic suggestions like Owen had before, feel free to send us a DM. Feel free to email us at myexistentialcrisispodcast@gmail.com. We have a couple more requests that have come in, so I have a list going. Don't think that I forgot about you. I have not forgotten about you. Madison only has so much time on her hands, so I'm doing the best I can with what I have. But yeah,
you could send them to me too. I will do them too.
Hailey will do them too. So yeah, feel free to let either one of us know. Again, you can select who does them. If you want Hailey to tell them, go for it.
Give me some. Give me some. Gimme. I want some. Gimme.
You heard her, folks.
Gimme.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. I said okay, bye.
You're cutting in and out. You said bye?
I said okay, bye. Sorry. I thought you heard that.
No, I did not.